Let's talk about preparation for parole. What should people do that when they're getting ready to get out on parole? This is for anybody that has any family members or friends that are in prison that are getting ready to get out. What's it like for them? What may they need help with? Okay. Before, when they see the parole board, they should already have some type of plan in their head about what they're going to do. Okay. So when you see the parole board, at least in Pennsylvania, um, you express to them, what your plans are, what you'd like to do when you get out of prison. Okay, it's just a part of what they ask you about. Okay, and then when you find out if you made parole, then you when you find out that you made parole, then they will start asking you for things. They want to know your home plan. They want to know where you're going to go, where you're going to live. Okay, so hopefully you have some type of family or friend that would let you live with them. In my case, that was my case. My family let me move in with them. Okay, but if you don't, then you express somehow or another that you'd like to go to a halfway house. Okay, and a halfway house is where people that make parole go in order to get back on their feet before they go uh, to the streets in some type of living situation. Okay, so it gives them a place to stay, and it will also help them find a job, which rolls over to the next thing that is at the top of that list is finding a place to live and finding a job. So when it comes to finding a job, when you're in prison, it's next to impossible to do unless you have family or friends that can get you a job working where they're working, under not under the table because it needs to be a legitimate job, a tax paying job. But you know, they might be able to get you in there because you're their friend or their family member, depending on what trade or occupation you decide to take. So other than that, you cannot find a job while you're still in prison. You can't just send applications to different companies and they say, "Okay, you're hired" when you get released, because you still don't even really know that release date yet. But also, um, if you do not have a job, then you can request talk to your counselors and everything and say that you don't have a job, and they still might grant you parole uh, back to your home. So if you're released to your home without a work plan, then at first you're going to be under um, more strict guidelines from your parole. You're going to have shorter curfews and things like that. The parole officer is going to come visit you more often, and it is absolutely mandatory that if you get a job, you got to let them know right away. Um, so, but when you get out, you can find a job, especially nowadays in this economy. Everybody's looking for people to work, and it doesn't matter where it is. And you know what? Suck it up and do whatever it takes, man. That's my advice to anybody. I don't care if you're flipping burgers or Burger King or McDonald's, or you're working a job that a lot of people don't really take pride in. You need to take pride in that because, for one, you're not in prison anymore. And guess what? Now, these people at Burger King, McDonald's, and convenience stores and stuff are making actually pretty decent money. So any job is a job, okay, and it'll help you get on your feet. If it's only a stepping stone job, that's fine. We're not talking about just making career paths and career decisions. All you're looking for is an occupation. Okay, so now if you're in a halfway house, the halfway house will help you find a job, and they have numerous resources. Okay, but while you're there, you'll get a job and you'll have to pay the halfway house like some rent and stuff like that. You'll have to pay expenses to the halfway house. But a halfway house can be a good thing. I know that there's a lot of stigma related to halfway houses. There's a lot of drug use and things like that. But if you can manage to keep your nose out of that stuff and treat it like it's prison, okay? When you're in a halfway house, you treat it like it's prison. Stay out of the halfway house as much as you can, as much as you're allowed to. Okay, you're allowed out during work hours. You might be allowed out to to go to a meal in the evenings, stuff like that. Go out and spend that hour. If you're allowed out for an hour for a meal, spend the entire hour out there, so that way when you go back in at night, you take a shower, you go right to bed, and just so everything else just doesn't even exist. Don't make friends in the halfway house. I'd advise against making friends in the halfway house, because those people are going to drag you down on the street when you're trying to get your life back. Not everybody's on the same page. Now, as far as finding a job, whether or not you're in the halfway house, it doesn't matter. There's still plenty of resources out there for people to find a job. And just because you're an inmate, or you're a former inmate, you can still find plenty of work out there. Okay. I got hired into a foundry. Foundry works a good working environment for someone that's out of prison. Now, it's hard work, you know what I mean? But it's a decent job. It pays pretty well. But there's plenty of warehouse jobs and factory jobs out there for anybody, and so if you want concrete answers on that, then I would go to your state's unemployment office. Start there. Your state's career link. In Pennsylvania, we got PA Career Link. We got the unemployment office. Just those two places alone, you should have no problem finding a job. But if you still aren't, you don't like the opportunities that they have, then go to unemployment agencies. Unemployment agencies, or employment agencies, they specialize in finding work for people. Okay. Now, it may be short-term work, but it could turn into long-term. That's how many places hire people, are through employment agencies, especially in this economy now. But even before this whole pandemic and everything, that's how a lot of people get hired. My old company where I worked, that's how they hired, was through an employment agency. And, it was listed as temporary to permanent. So, people would start working there thinking that, they could only be there for 3 months and thinking that was temporary, but they would hire them on and keep them, for as long as they'd stay around. And it was a very good paying job for, most normal people. So, so my final advice on that, okay, on getting your foundation for when you get out, okay, is that if you're in a halfway house, okay, use the resources in the halfway house. Don't let the negativity in the halfway house drag you down. Okay, use the resources that they have in the halfway house. The counselors, the advisors, and everything that are in the halfway house will help you find jobs. They'll help you find a home plan, an actual home. So once you're there for a couple months, if you're completely on your own and you have no help, okay, they will help you find a home. Once you're there for a couple months, you can save up a couple $1,000, and they will help you find an apartment close to your job, or help you find another job. So use those resources. If you're not in a halfway house, if you are at home, then talk to your parole agent first of all, because your parole agent is going to know places that are known to hire felons, and that some of his or her other parolees have jobs at and have been successful at. So they know the work environment there. So that is a perfect place to start. Even when I found I had my own job, I found my own job in multiple, different points since I've been released. My parole agent would still bring it up. Hey, why don't you go out here and apply? Why don't you go out there and apply? I'm like, dude, I'm happy where I'm at. Okay, I make more money here. I'm happier here. I'm closer to him. There, all this stuff that was good. He would still try to tell me about these different jobs, and that's what parole agents are. Parole, that's what they care about. When you're on parole, they care about three things. Okay, mainly two. Well, they care about all three, but they care about whether you have a place to live, whether you have a job, and if you give clean urine tests. That's really the basics of parole. And then obviously the other things: don't commit any more crimes, don't possess weapons and stuff like that. That just comes without saying. Okay, that's common sense. But for real, if you can stay clean from drugs and alcohol, you have a job, you have a place to live, and you're going to be paying your fines and restitution off and everything. At least in Pennsylvania, it's mandatory. They take it right out of your paycheck, and as long as you're doing that, you will have no problems on parole. And You can be successful in this in life after prison. You can. You don't have to be one of those statistics. I've been reading and doing a lot of research on statistics about how many people go back to prison in different states. And let me tell you, it is discouraging. And you know it because you've seen it when you were in prison. You might be one person that have gone back to prison already, but that doesn't mean that it has to be this time. It doesn't mean it has to be you, and it doesn't mean it has to be you this time. This could be, your path to success from here on out. Just don't forget where you come from. Remember what happened in prison. Remember that stuff. Don't forget it. And don't let that past creep up on you neither, with your with your friends. Change your people, places, and things. Keep a job. And stay off drugs and alcohol. So other than that, for bars and stars, don't forget, bars and stars. There's no bars, no judgment, and no limits. Thanks for joining us.